This episode of the Device Talks weekly podcast is brought to you by our Device Talks Tuesday speaker series. Join us on Thursday. Device Talks Tuesday is going to be on Thursday this week. Our friends at Resonetics will be putting together an excellent presentation. Go to devicetalks.com for more information. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Hey everyone, this is Tom Salami. Welcome back to the Device Talks weekly podcast. It's great having you here. In the name of full disclosure, I want to let you know that this episode of the Device Talks weekly podcast has been altered slightly from the first one that went out. This one features an interview with a really fascinating person. Her name is Carolina Aguilar. She is the co-founder and CEO of INBRAIN Neuroelectronics. And she's going to talk about her career and about INBRAIN, which is a very cool company, one that I wanted to learn more about. So I'm really grateful that I have this podcast to ask questions of interesting people. We also talked about INBRAIN's recent partnership that it announced. It's working with Merck, KGaA, Darmstadt, Germany. So when she's referencing the collaboration during our interview, that's what she's talking about. A partnership with Merck, KGaA, Darmstadt, Germany. So that's it. Now, let's bring in my podcast partner, Chris Newmarker, Executive Editor of Life Sciences at MassDevice. Chris Newmarker, how are you, sir?
Doing well, sir. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you, Chris.
We just did our jumping jacks to try to get some energy.
Right. We're trying to get some energy up. Woohoo!
Woohoo! Here we go.
Speaking of energy, my oldest son got his first job. He's working in a restaurant washing dishes.
Oh, man.
Started this week, which is kind of cool. It's kind of one of those. It's funny. We came upon a video of him learning to ride a bike. This was on Facebook this week. And like this experience feels very much like that. You kind of like watching him like kind of forge ahead in life. You're like, oh, don't tip over. But it got me thinking, Chris, what was your first job?
Oh, my first job. Yo.
Were you executive editor of Life Sciences back in high school? Was that?
No, you know what? I slung burgers at Mickey D's.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Which, for a high school student was pretty good because you got all the free Mickey D's you could want, So that wasn't bad. That was a pretty good lunch break,
for sure. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Good start. It obviously worked out for you.
It worked out. Like, moved on to much bigger, better things. But hey, it's a start. McDonald's. There you go. Eventually made it to register.
So see, I thought you'd have to. I would think you'd have to work your way to cooking, but you have to work your way to register. Register is the higher tier.
At least when I was there in the 1990s. Yes. You kind of wonder about that. I think it's more like they'd rather you were in the back, like toasting buns and grilling burgers. They want to make sure that you're acceptable for communicating with others, I guess.
That's a fair point.
And then eventually you could, work drive-through or the register. So
that's a fair point.
Good times.
Good times for sure.
Yeah. What about you, man? What was your first?
I worked at Terminal A at the airport.
Wow.
Which was Eastern Airline. I think it was Eastern at the time, or Eastern might have just died. But I worked.
They went bankrupt. Yeah, they were one of those airlines.
I didn't work for the airline. I worked for the Marriott Host, the food service place there. So I cooked in the employee cafeteria. I bussed tables, empty trash, utility they called us, which was basically, whatever you had to do.
Yeah.
Remove the sticky traps with the mice on it. All the fun stuff back then.
Oh, I had a job when in college like that. At one point, I was my hometown has a clothing dryer factory, and I was picking up trash on the factory floor. So that was fun. All the soda cans, everybody like drinking soda while they were shooting screws into dryers. That was a good time.
This has like a Tom Cruise, all the right moves kind of feel to it. Like Chris working in the local factory.
Tell you, it sounds like we got good hard working roots, Tom.
That's
right.
Just to bring it back, and then we'll get it to the Newmarker's Newsmakers. But sort of, my son came home, and I'm like, "How was it?" And he just had like a little smile on his face. So I do.
It's awesome.
You do remember those moments, like when it was work, but you kind of you made friends, you kind of made your way in life. It's really cool time of your life. So
that is so awesome. It's like congrats. That's really cool. I mean,
I'm excited for him.
Yeah, and he gets to get a paycheck. It's always nice to get that paycheck.
Always nice to get a paycheck for sure.
That's right.
All right. Well, we better earn our paycheck, Mr. Newmarker. That's we're here to talk about.
Oh yeah, this whole work thing. We better go and do this work thing now.
So. I know. But what is our Newmarker's Newsmakers list, Chris? Let's start at number 5.
Number 5 on the list, we've got Ancora Heart raising $80 million for their ventricular restoration system. And this is, they have their AccuCinch, ventricular restoration system. And, they're going to be earmarking this $80 million toward acceleration of their pivotal clinical study for the system. Sorry, so blah 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 blah. And it's it treats symptomatic heart failure with reduced ejection fractions. So so there we go. Some money. They're going to be moving forward with doing a clinical study of it.
Interesting. I had a question from an entrepreneur in Germany. They have a heart assist device company, and they're looking for funds and asking if I knew of investors, and reached out to one VC. And I was told there was some concern about sort of investing in, and I don't know if this is that, so I'm being careful, but the whole hardware thing sort of has people a little skittish about devices that assist the heart. So it's great to see that Ancora raise $80 million. I guess there's still some optimism out there.
Yeah, I mean their system. They're touting this as the only completely transcatheter procedure for treating an enlarged left ventricle. I mean, and kind of like an LVAD. That's a pretty. It's a serious device here. I mean, you're hooking up a pump to somebody's heart and running lines out.
So this is less mechanical and more.
This is like a
more
little
structural.
This is more structural and
Gotcha.
something you're delivering via catheter. Definitely. LVADs were always serious business. I still remember a conference at the University of Minnesota. I was at a few years ago where they had preserved hearts. They had these hearts that were they I think shot like some kind of plastic into them or whatever. But they were real human hearts that have been in people. And they like a few of them had LVADs attached to them, and they're like, man, that just really
be cool to see. Wow.
It really drove home like, wow, that's a serious device there. That's something you're really hooking up to somebody. So, so
that would be neat to see for sure. And that's great clarification on your part as to what Ancora Heart is doing.
Exactly. Yeah. This is like,
let's go on to number 4.
Hey, number 4 on the list, we've got a win for Nevro. They got FDA approved for their Senza system to treat chronic pain that's associated with diabetic neuropathy. So so that's a big win. Unfortunately, a lot of people suffer from diabetes, and this could definitely be like a new more widespread use for the Senra system. It's a spinal cord stimulation system that to treat pain, and this is a new indication from FDA to treat painful diabetic neuropathy.
That's fascinating. I'd love to explore that more. You wonder, how this differs from other pain relief stimulation devices in terms of placement. Do you identify different parts of the spine where you apply the system to cut that pain down?
Yeah, that would be really interesting to find out from Nevro.
Yeah. I'll have to get them on sometime, but great news. We talk about diabetes a lot, but more management of insulin and glucose. But there, of course, are people who are ravaged with it and really need relief in other ways. So it's great that Nevro has this to offer now.
Absolutely, and and kind of another just overall trend this is part of is how we're really there's been a lot of movement toward using devices toward using a neurostim. Maybe it's something like Nevro, where this is something that's kind of like a pacemaker you're implanting in the body. Maybe it's something like that's much more like wearable and non-invasive. But I mean, just trying to use more of this, neurostim to treat pain versus, people taking painkillers, and we're seeing a lot more of that. We just this week, this isn't on the list, but we had like J&J and some other major companies settling with state AGs for billions of dollars over the opioid abuse crisis. Like, definitely, it seems like medtech has something to offer to help people treat pain without getting hooked on painkillers.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
All right, Chris Newmarker, bring us into number 3 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers list.
Well, number 3 on the list, this is like a really cool roundup from our senior editor, Daniel Kirsch, and ran in full on medical design outsourcing. But we have the Galien Foundation. They just announced their nominees for most innovative medical devices for their 15th annual Prix Galien USA Awards. And that always gives us like a really good opportunity to just like point out like, hey, what are the most innovative medical devices this year? I mean, like what this foundation is announcing as their nominees is a good indication of like, okay, like what's really getting some buzz or some excitement. And we got a whole list of all kinds of different devices. Some of them you've covered here. We've covered here on Device Talks Weekly. Like for example, the you've talked to CVRX in the past. Like their Barostem Neos on the list. They're one of the nominees. We've got Edwards Sapien 3 Towers on the list. An interesting entry was we had Boston Size HeartLogic heart failure diagnostic that they packaged in with their cardio devices. That's their heart failure diagnostic making the list. So yeah, make a guess what's on the list, and check out the article.
Awesome. Great work by Danielle. And yeah, that's a really important award. So it's nice to give attention or give praise where it's due. And we should note that the first 2 articles, number 4 and 5, were written by Sean Hooley.
Yes, that's editor. Right. Yep. Associate editor Sean Hooley. Sean is a writing machine, and he just really keeps MassDevice humming. It's awesome.
Absolutely. All right, Chris, bring us into number 2 on Newmarker's Newsmakers list.
Number 2, we're going back to, pain relief. We got, NeuroMetrix has had a great week, to put it mildly. They started out the week, below, $10, and they're, trading over 20 now, so with their share price, and they've just had, a lot of good news this week. I mean, they got a FDA breakthrough device designation to use their, Quell device to treat fibromyalgia symptoms, so that'll really kind of boost their application with FDA over their because they can get priority review, they can get interactive communication with FDA. It could be a really big deal for them to actually get indication on Quell for fibromyalgia, because I mean, even just the CDC alone estimates that roughly 4 million Americans suffer from it. So I mean, to have this indicated for that you could use this to treat some of the pain would be a big thing for fibromyalgia sufferers, a big thing for NeuroMetrix, that they could market the Quell for that use. And then just right on the heels of that, they had their Q2 earnings report, where they were things were looking good for them with that. I mean, their sales growth was like 62.8% year over year for the second quarter. So just a lot of good news for NeuroMetrix this week.
That's fantastic. No, again, we talk about neuro a lot, but it's great to see this field get its stride. It's been offering promise for so long. It's nice to see it really becoming a reality and helping people. So fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean, frankly, stuff like TENS devices, I mean, they've been around for a long time. But, in the past, it was like, oh my gosh, it's a box with wires, with pads, and you're seeing companies like NeuroMetrix where you got something like the Quell device where, I mean, they're just really upping the game on, using these things as wearable, it's much more sophisticated, a much more sophisticated use of electrical stimulation to treat pain, so it's really cool. It's kind of feels like it's coming into its own, really, going mainstream right now. Absolutely.
Great point by you on that. Boy, you are just full of insights today, Chris Newmarker.
Full of wisdom and insight.
Did a lot of thinking while flipping burgers back in the day. A lot of deep thoughts.
That's right.
All right, Chris, bring us into number 1 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers list.
Well, talking about Sean, Sean did a really good, solid interview with Dexcom CEO Kevin Sayer. It's the story is getting like thousands of hits on both MassDevice and Drug Delivery Business News, where it ran in full. But Sayer was like talking a lot about the G7, which is their next generation CGM that we're expecting out. They're still being like really quiet about how things are going with FDA and a US launch. We're hopefully going to hear more next week during their earnings call. But Sarah was telling Sean that they expect a launch of the G7 later this year in Europe. So like where they're so that's and they're also like doing a ton of ramping up with manufacturing. I mean, he was saying by the end of 2013 they expect to have like the capacity to build like hundreds of millions of these things.
Wow.
You just look at the comparison between the two devices, and the G7 is just much. I mean, the G7 is about the size of a coin. It's about 60% smaller than the G6. I mean, right there, that looks like a really big improvement, like a much less just this really nice tiny all-in-one sensor applicator and transmitter. So I mean, just a lot of buzz around this device. So it'll be exciting to find out more about it. But if you want to get an idea of what's up with the G7, and what they've been working on with it, check out Sean's article.
Fantastic. More good work by Sean Hooley. All right, great Newmarker's Newsmakers list, Chris. Carolina Aguilar, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Tom.
Great to have you here. Great to talk to someone who's has a company based in Spain, as we talked a bit before off camera. My part of my family hails from there, so it's great to see the industry grow there, because I can perhaps justify having a conference there someday, or at least having a business visit. So it'd be great to do that someday. But I'd love to learn about your path. Did you grow up in Spain? Are you from there?
Yes, I did. I was born in Madrid. And I spent most of my time there with occasional trips to the US when I was 15. Parents in Spain always send you to the US for summer camps and things like that. But then most of the time was in Spain, yes, and then US and Switzerland.
How did you find your way into the medtech industry? Or what drove you to this career?
Yeah, I was always an explorer, since very little. I was always playing with chemistry games and always trying to solve things. And the brain was one of the most amazing mysteries I was always chasing. And I didn't know how to get there, but I started being a pharmacist. Then I realized drugs were good. Pharmacokinetics and all these things are interesting, but not enough. Mm-hmm. And just when I had to choose which first job I was going to go for, I discovered medical technology and Medtronic and all this ecosystem. I was absolutely fascinated about it and really wanted to be part of it.
That's fantastic. No, that's an interesting point. I've always found I've talked about this on this podcast many times, but just the neurostimulation aspect and then in connecting devices to the neural system just is magical in some ways. So I could certainly see being drawn to that. So what was your first job in medtech?
Yeah, it was interesting because I had done a thesis on neuroscience in the US about Parkinson's disease. But then back in Spain, there was not neuroscience jobs. And I first did some cosmetics experience, which were great to understand the consumer side, because we often forget that side. And then I met someone that introduced me to Medtronic in Spain. Mm-hmm. And I asked, and this is where she told me, well, there is actually a therapy called deep brain stimulation that is actually applied in Parkinson's disease, which is what you have a study. I studied the effect of pesticides in neurodegeneration, so Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and the relationship. And then I was fascinated about it. And I entered as market development manager for the Spanish market. But very soon, and especially after having been in the US, I wanted to keep on moving, going to Asia or somewhere else. They told me, well, the European headquarters of Medtronic is in Switzerland. I was like, wow, that could work. And this is where I ended up in different roles until I got the European business director role for deep brain stimulation. in parallel, doing also some global commercialization for DBS.
And you have your training is we have a master's in neuroscience and neurotoxicology from Virginia Tech. So you were on the neural path one way or the other, it seems.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, the brain is what makes us human.
Mm-hmm.
And when there is a disease, we disconnect from that humanity, and finding therapies, and especially real time at the push of a button therapies that can reconnect us to humanity, for me was the thing that will intrigue me the most. And I really wanted to understand how that worked and how to make it better always.
So
I spent 10 years there.
What was your time at Medtronic like? Let's talk about that a bit. We talked to we have a separate podcast talking just about Medtronic. It's an interesting place. What was your experience there like?
Wow, it's fantastic. It's been a dream over a decade, because it's a true school of leadership and ethics and patient engagement and innovation. And I have a long list of things that I could say about Medtronic and its people. I saw some of your podcasts with Job Martha recently. I'm like, well, I actually was leaving DBS to go to diabetes when Brett came. And leaders like him and leaders like others like Rottenhood, Hank Mertens, I have so many idols.
Mm-hmm.
And also the ladies, Annette Brules, they're really, really important in my life because they became role models of leadership. And it's a place where you can truly innovate, right? I was given always carte blanche to go and propose solutions, to go and propose new business models. And I always felt trusted that I could pull that through. And we all make mistakes. I'm sure that I made them on the way, but they were always also rewarded as a learning point to keep on doing better, right? So I will always have Medtronic in my heart forever, and it's been the best experience as to progress now where I am.
I want to go into where you are because it's an interesting company, but I did see a post you had recently on LinkedIn about culture of a company and whether it is derived from the leaders or from the employees. I wonder what sort of lessons Medtronic taught you in that regard, and what is your position on that? How are you building a culture at INBRAIN?
This is very important, and it's still one of those question marks that I'm trying to solve for myself and for this company we are building, and hopefully for the industry. I mean, business books, or at least the business books and the school of business that I've attended, they said that the culture is built from the CEO downward. But that for me is hard because at the end, culture is about trust and collaboration, and that starts from the people. So for me, there is not a top and a bottom. And actually, I'm studying different books on holacracy and the teal movement, where it's more about higher level of consciousness, where we can actually lead ourselves and have this distributed leadership and not depend on a leader. So why me or any other CEO need to be smarter than the collective amount of people that is on the company? That is impossible, right? So I wanted to start building a culture from the people. And we have defined a framework about the eat, the we, and the eat. The I, the we, and the eat, right? So starting from your values, the values of the group, and the values of the company. So I hire a person that is helping us on that. And actually, there's like 3 or 4 coaches in the company as to also innovate the HR model or the people development model, so we can get to those higher level of consciousness and leadership based on trust, without the dependency or the constant dependency of decisions made at the top. So people are entrusted from all levels to take risk and be responsible and accountable for it.
And this was an approach you sought or at least identified prior to the pandemic, because it seems like it would be the perfect strategy for how we're all working now, working remotely, sort of working independently.
Well, this is, I think, a personal development. I invested a lot on self-questioning me and many things in life and trying to find answers about it. So we can build better society. So it's been an evolution. And I question also some of these pyramidal models of corporations, right? Where you have all these political controversies and these silos being created as a consequence of control and power. And I was looking for a way to absolutely get rid of that, because I've seen also the damage that it can create on an organization at different sizes. So now having the opportunity of rebuild this from scratch and experiment as well, and maybe fail and maybe rebuild again, I really wanted to put a lot of emphasis on that as well. It's core to who we are here. And yes, as you said, we found INBRAIN in the middle of the pandemic, or at the beginning of the pandemic. So it was going to be a virtual model, and we had to empower people to be responsible wherever they are.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I could talk the whole interview about that, but let's understand a bit more about INBRAIN. So what led you to start the company? You had already left Medtronic at that point, correct? Or did you leave Medtronic and go start INBRAIN directly?
No, so it was an interesting story, because I had been 10 years in deep brain stimulation. Mm-hmm. So I saw the incredible benefits of it, but also the areas of improvement and some of the struggles some companies had. I think I lived the most dynamic decade, of DBS, at least, of my time, where many therapies being launched with competition coming after Medtronic being alone. So it had been a very interesting decade, as I said. But on the other hand, they called me for also incredible job on diabetes and virtual clinics and value-based healthcare models of payment per outcomes. Mm-hmm. And I was very, very attracted to that. And I spent 3 years there. It became a Harvard Business School case. We had very interesting contracts being signed in different places. But then it was also a controversial model, because at the end, Medtronic with that model became a provider of care. And there was part of the company that was truly on favor of innovating and making healthcare more sustainable with this innovation. Mm-hmm. But there was others that also questioned the model. So I became very passionate about that, and Medtronic had doubts. Omar was leaving, or had left, was leaving, I think it was the transition. Mm-hmm. And he was the, let's say, the one that put value-based healthcare at the center and the core of the company in the latest years. So I was a bit disappointed that probably the focus on that was not going to be that big. Mm-hmm. And I went to a VC to actually see if I could take the whole risk and make an equity carve-out or do something with it. And of course, my European president was at that time not ready to take those decisions. And probably I was a bit crazy from my side to even attempt to do that. But at the VC level, I met the people from INBRAIN. And at that point, I was no longer on the DBS side, because I had to spend so much time. But then these guys had prototypes that we took to customers of mine, to evaluate and to give me feedback about. And they were like, wow, this changes everything. You have to do this. There's no way we are not making this happen. And this is how we actually decided to found INBRAIN and start the journey.
Interesting. Well, let's talk about INBRAIN. As I said prior to pushing record, I watching from afar, I always thought INBRAIN was developing devices, doing a little more exploration. It seems to be more of a materials company. You were about to explain what that was, and I asked you to save it for this interview. So let's get into that. What is INBRAIN's primary function?
Yeah, it is the use of graphene. Mm-hmm. So this is indeed a new material to decoding brain and nerve signals into medical solutions in the same way that neuromodulation does, right? But we are making a modern version of neuromodulation, I will say. Medical devices have been very innovative at that time, but now compared to the semiconductors and everything that is happening on the electronic side, so in any other areas of our ecosystem, you see that there are things that could be improved. However, with the materials that we're using, so platinum, iridium, silicon, it is very hard to integrate with modern electronics and to have large amounts of data flowing into these devices and extract the most powerful information as to create the most powerful outcomes. So that's what we are doing. We are interfacing 3 industries, so deep tech, medtech, and digital health.
Interesting.
To actually overcome some of the barriers that we have seen on the medtech side.
So,
and graphene is the enabler, yes.
So what are the qualities or characteristics of graphene that make it right for this job?
Yeah. So there were 2 researchers, Galien and Novoselav, that got the Nobel Prize in 2010 about the extraction of graphene. And then due to these properties, so graphene is the thinnest material known to man. It's an atom thick.
Oh, wow.
And so miniaturization, it's one of the capabilities that we have with graphene. But then on top of that, it has 100 times more charge injection that can be pulled through the material at the very low impedance. So we can miniaturize, so we can create very high density and resolution interfaces. And the fact that we can inject more charge with low impedance also helps, and this is our hypothesis, the management of, for instance, batteries, right? So read more efficient on battery management. So with this, we can really do many different devices in the sense that, the platinum, iridium, silicon interfaces are quite manual on its build-up. And if you will look at the wafer of graphene, it's kind of printed electronics. And therefore, you can, I believe, and this is our hypothesis, right? This is all being built as we speak. The scalability of this material and its integration with these modern electronics, I think it's going to be much more agile, I would say.
So, will the devices, if this bears out, that are made with the graphene or employing the graphene, will they be different in design than what we're currently using for deep brain stimulation or neural stimulation, or is graphene really the lead or the interface of the existing models? It's just a new way to sort of access the brain.
It is quite different. If I will send you some pictures, Tom, so you see how is it looking. We have a cortical, a deep interface. So all these devices, all these interfaces, what they have in common is the high resolution and the high density. And in the case of the cortical, if I will show you, it's like a second skin. It's transparent and it's like cellophane. So it fixes completely to the surface of the brain. So it really looks very different to what we know, which is the silicon hard, almost thick grids with the big contacts on metal. And I know thin film is coming to the industry as well. So, probably you can get an idea. But on top of the thin film technologies, this graphene contacts with these unique properties that make it interesting.
Interesting. Well, you just said that. It's a favorite word of mine, as anyone who listens to the podcast
I love it
can
too.
attest. So let's talk. You referenced the deal. How did it come together?
Yes. So look, this happened all in very little time. As I said, we founded INBRAIN in December 2019. We got the first funding June 2020.
Wow.
And this year we got Series A, which was close to $17 million. It was March. I don't know if I said it. And in that path with INBRAIN, we had one of our patents is about the potential development of these interfaces through a process that is the one that has been patented for both the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. And we had some experience already in sciatic nerves and in other nerves doing this kind of calf electrodes. A year ago, actually, when we were actually founding INBRAIN, and we started getting into some conversations. And Look, I am a bit new in dealing with startups on manufacturing, but I've seen a lot of people being scared of partnering early in time. But in this case, we found such a good connection. So the people was incredible. The framework that was given to us to collaborate and the conditions were extremely fair. And we thought that this could give us a chance to explore the peripheral nervous system without deviating from our core goal on the central nervous system, right? So in order to enable that partnership, we said, okay, let's keep the focus on INBRAIN. We also raised the money, and we have an accountability here for the return of that money into, benefits and outcomes for patients. But on the other hand, since this is such a good collaboration, we could create this subsidiary, is what we call Inervia Bioelectronics, and also put a small team focus on that collaboration without affecting the development and the progress of INBRAIN. So this is how we did it. We created this vehicle called Inervia Bioelectronics, and it's through this vehicle that we have enabled this collaboration.
And what will the collaboration look like? Are you providing materials and they'll do the product development? Are you collaborating on the product development, or are you doing most of the product development? What does it look like?
Yeah, no, we are doing the product development. So we are together on the design and the testing of what we want collectively, but we are developing the interfaces and hopefully also the system. They are setting all the clinical part, all the clinical studies, first, and then hopefully clinical if all the results are good. And this is how we are collaborating. And of course, together we are going to look at the algorithm, the data piece, right? Because this is common to both companies. So we are strong on the data processing and all the algorithm development. And they also, of course, as the biology leaders, want to be and give input on that. So yeah, it's a co-development from very early on rodents to humans.
And how excited are you to be working with a pharma company in this space? I mean, bioelectronics is a really hopeful and exciting space in medtech, and I think it's a perfect opportunity for pharma and medtech to kind of work together going forward.
This is, as you see, what excites me is the combination of industries, because it's where innovation really happens. I think medtech was really in its niche for such a long time that even if it was, as I said, very innovative, needed to evolve. And in this, I was very excited already when I saw Galvani Bioelectronics being founded in that unique way.
Yep.
Yeah. And I always wonder, can we have more models like that? Because, more heads together doing these things at that scale would be very interesting. So yeah, I am very excited about the partnership. It's really good. And US is always, let's say, the leader on neurotech, but seeing Europe now uniting forces into this is also very invigorating.
Sure.
Honestly. So it's a double mission.
And it'll help me set up my Device Talks conference in Europe in a couple of years, I hope. Let's keep building forward.
We'll cook together something in Spanish, Tom.
Absolutely. A final question. I would just want to circle back to the culture. So this is a big move for INBRAIN. You're working with a larger corporate partner. I'm sure there'll be more of these to come. How do you ensure that the culture that you'd like to see in your company sort of doesn't change as you are influenced by all these outside forces?
Because as I said at the beginning, we are building it together and we're changing many things. I've seen many people trying to get back to the model we had. Now that the pandemic in some cases is kind of getting better, people or some people come back to apply the old models, right? So let's go back to FaceTime. Let's go back to everything that we were doing before, to the heavy traveling. And I think we have to learn something about this, right? So for instance, in INBRAIN, we don't bring everybody to Barcelona. That wouldn't make sense. We now go where the talent is, wherever they are. And we have people in the US, we have people in Netherlands, we have people in France, we have people in Israel. So we just go where they are. And we know that digital is going to be our daily life.
Mm-hmm.
So we better get used to new tools to collaborate differently and not get constrained and structured by our old models. I always say that innovate is about de-learning, right? You have to de-learn us to learn again and recreate new things, because otherwise we get stuck on past times, no?
Yep.
So yeah, we are changing many things, and we are doing this with the people. And we use Agile, so it's a methodology for continuous improvement,
mm-hmm.
where we have constant retrospectives, right? So every week there's retrospectives about the programs, which mean reflection. Time is scheduled for reflection about what worked, what didn't work, what we have to stop to get better, right? So it's like a self-awareness, not only personal, but also of the team, and where are we going with what we are doing.
Oh, that's so true. And I think, and you're right, the pandemic forced a lot of us to do a lot of that, to kind of sit and say, wait a second, is this really the right way to do this? And do I want to go back to doing it that way? So exciting stuff. I could talk more and more about culture and tech, especially in the neurospace, but I'll let you go. Thank you for joining us in the podcast. Thank
you, Tom. And I wait for you in Spain to get some nice pinchos and tapas together.
I can't wait. Thank you, Carolina. All right, Chris Newmarker, we've done it again. We've wrapped up another episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. Now is the time we do what?
Do the social media, follow, subscribe.
Where can we find you on social media, Chris?
I am on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker. You can find me on Twitter too, @Newmarker. So
great.
And always happy to chat.
He is always happy to chat. He's a very social man. And I am on Twitter @MedTechTom. I'm on LinkedIn, Tom Salemi, Salemi. If you would you do us the favor of sharing this podcast on social media channels, and please connect to both Chris and I when you do, so we can be part of those conversations. And we would also very much like you to subscribe, as Chris noted, to this podcast. We are on every major podcast channel: Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. So just subscribe, and future episodes will be sent directly to you. You can also find our other podcast there, Medtronic Talks. We are intent upon sending you the best darn medtech audio you can listen to. So
that's right.
Just make it easy on yourself. Just subscribe already. So, all right.
Yeah.
That is our wrap. Tune in next week. We'll have another great episode of the Device Talks Weekly Podcast waiting for you.
Stay safe. If you know someone who isn't vaccinated, tell them to get the shot, darn it.
Well said.